Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today. You know, a week ago, I led our U.S. Innovation Tax team to a listening tour of what some people call Silicon Valley, others call Tech Valley in California. While our focus was on encouraging innovation through sound, stable tax policies, it didn't take long for the discussions to also include intellectual property, the theft of the intellectual property, and extraterritorial foreign taxes. Bad policies like the TRIPS waiver and forced tech transfers disincentivize small startups and major corporations from innovating, testing, and developing and manufacturing here in the United States. And they counter the good policies that we could restore or strengthen, like immediate research and development expensing and the foreign-derived intangible income, or FDII. Excuse me. The TRIPS waiver has put us on a slippery slope. We now have countries at the WTO proposing more forced tech transfers, localized operations, and data localizations. In short, the complete abandonment of U.S. digital trade priorities. As one startup told me, it's easy to get a shop set up or to move research and development to another country that has more favorable policies as opposed to punitive ones, and that's not good for our country. Policies that hurt innovation hurt all Americans because they slow the economy, reduce jobs, and give foreign adversaries a competitive advantage. Another major area of concern, as we've talked about before, is the digital services taxes, or DSTs. We've witnessed countries like France and Canada specifically target U.S. companies to fill their coffers with these disastrous extraterritorial taxes. One company I talked to used the phrase, it's a bold grab of U.S. money, and it's costing Americans billions of dollars. Dr. Atkinson, OECD's Pillar 1 was supposed to provide clarity and stability around DSTs, but instead the Biden-Harris negotiators have put America last, and as we've talked about earlier, DSTs are proliferating. How do we, I know Mr. Kildee had asked some about other provisions we can do, but are there some equitable offsets to discourage foreign countries from thinking they can get away with transferring U.S. dollars? When you mentioned taxes, are there other things that we could do as well?
Thank you. I think the first thing to recognize is that Pillar 1 is basically institutionalizing DSTs. That's all it is. Pillar 1 says you can do a DST, you just have to do it according to these rules. If your profit rate is above 10%, we get to tax 25% of those profits, but only for certain size companies, even if you... So I think the U.S. administration and Congress needs to come out and say, no, there's no logic behind Pillar 1. The OECD says the logic behind Pillar 1 is because now we're trading things across borders that we didn't trade before in services. Well, by that logic, we should be taxing any company that sells anything in the U.S., even though they don't have an operation here. So, I don't know, maybe there's some French water that comes across the border. Well, we should tax Perrier. I mean, there's no logic behind why you would single out digital. So, I think again, we have to do two things. One is I like that idea of mirror taxes. Fine, you're going to do that. We're going to tax you, and we're going to tax you just as much, if not more. We need to make it clear that they can't take U.S. taxpayer money. I think the second thing would be there's a whole set of things we can do around trade enforcement that we should say, fine, you're going to do that, we'll do this. And I think at the end of the day, it's just a power play. We have to show that we're not going to let them take our money.
Yep. Mr. Shabazz, for years we've had major concerns about CCP stealing intellectual property. As we've talked about advancing technologies such as AI, are you concerned about China and that they'll continue to ransack our intellectual property and why it's important for tech like this to be fostered in the United States instead of in China?
Thank you for the question. We are concerned about generally the Chinese Communist Party and the government's influence here in the United States, the ways that it conducts espionage, transnational repression, as well as malign political influence. That's where we think it's incredibly important to do two things. One is to stand up laws that essentially promote resilience here in the United States, resilience for companies, resilience for individuals who may face attacks from the Chinese government and its affiliates. And we also do think that it's incredibly important to show why technologies that are developed in the United States and why the United States governance system is very different to that in China. I think that's an incredibly important message that also sells well to our partners in other countries around the world, those in other markets that are looking to goods. They want to understand why it is that they should be purchasing US technologies rather than those that are manufactured in China. Obviously, there are some economic considerations where perhaps they may be going for the technology that is the cheapest. But I think that's where the United States can play on its competitive advantage as a democracy to show that, well, listen, our technology isn't stealing your data. It's not, when there's a smart city that is built by Huawei in Africa or other technologies where Chinese companies are developing the infrastructure, there have been reports that that data is being slowly trickled back to China so that it can be used for Chinese intelligence purposes or for corporate espionage. So I think it's very important for U.S. companies to show that that's not part of the game. What differentiates U.S. companies, and this is what I'm arguing we should be promoting, is that we're going to be safeguarding your data. This data is going to be under the oversight of of the strictest cybersecurity safeguards. That, I think, is how we differentiate ourselves from the Chinese Communist Party. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the witnesses. I know there's a lot more I'd like to discuss, but just to close out, I do think the government, both in Congress and the administration, needs to actively defend U.S. innovators and job creators against these assaults. I yield back.